Welcome to EduCasts, home of EduCasters. When you step into a faculty lounge in any American school, you'll hear a lot of names thrown around. You'll hear about Piaget and his cognitive stages, Vygotsky and his scaffolding, and surely John Dewey and his experiential learning. But there is one name that often sits in the corner like the elephant in the room: Sigmund Freud. Mentioning Freud in a modern educational setting can sometimes feel like opening a can of worms. His theories, particularly the psychosexual theory of development, are often dismissed as outdated, overly focused on sexuality, or just plain weird. We tend to chuckle at the mention of penis envy or the Oedipus complex and move on to more scientific approaches. However, to completely scrub Freud from our educational awareness is to throw the baby out with the bathwater. While we might not buy into every single aspect of his dogma, Freud was the grandfather of developmental psychology. He was the first to really pound the table and say, hey, what happens to us as kids matters, and it shapes who we become as adults. For an educator, understanding Freud's psychosexual theory isn't about psychoanalyzing every student who walks through the door. We aren't therapists, and the classroom isn't a clinic. But looking at student behavior through a Freudian lens can offer a fascinating alternative perspective on why kids do what they do. It helps us understand the hidden drives, the subconscious conflicts, and the developmental baggage that students drag into school alongside their backpacks. By unpacking these stages, we can develop a deeper empathy for the problem child, the perfectionist, and the class clown. The engine under the hood, libido and fixation. Before we dive into the specific stages, we have to get a handle on the engine that drives Freud's theory, the libido. Now, in common American parlance, we usually use libido as a synonym for sex drive, but for Freud, it was much broader than that. He viewed libido as a general life force, psychic energy that drives us to seek pleasure and avoid pain. Freud argued that as a child grows, this energy gets focused on different parts of the body, which he called erogenous zones. It's like a spotlight moving across a stage. In each act of the play, or stage of development, the child faces a specific conflict. The goal is to resolve that conflict and move on. Here is the kicker for teachers. If a child doesn't navigate a stage successfully, if they are either frustrated, undergratified, or spoiled, overgratified, they can develop a fixation. This means a part of their psychic energy gets stuck or frozen at that stage. Even as an adult, under stress, they might regress to the behaviors of that time. This concept of fixation is a light bulb moment for many teachers. It suggests that the high schooler chewing on their pen cap until it's a mangled mess, or the middle schooler who is obsessively neat and throws a fit if their papers are out of order, might be displaying echoes of early childhood development. It frames behavior not just as a choice, but as a symptom of an underlying developmental story. Act 1. The oral stage, birth to 1 year. The world is a mouth. The first stage of development is the oral stage. For an infant, the mouth is the center of the universe. It's how they eat, how they explore, and how they self-soothe. The primary conflict here is weaning, the process of becoming less dependent on the mother or caregiver for basic nourishment. At its core, this stage is about dependency and trust. If a baby's needs are met consistently, they learn that the world is a safe place. They develop a sense of optimism and trust. If they are neglected or weaned too abruptly, they might develop deep-seated insecurities. In the classroom, you might think, well, I teach 3rd grade, so this doesn't apply to me. But the remnants of the oral stage are everywhere in K-12 education. An oral fixation in a school setting often manifests as a need for constant reassurance and psychological nourishment. We all know that student who is glued to the teacher's hip. They need constant validation. They ask, is this right, after writing a single sentence? They are essentially seeking to be fed approval. On a more physical level, you see oral behavior spike when students are stressed. During a big test, look around the room. You'll see kids biting their nails, chewing on pencils, sucking on their thumbs in younger grades, or even overeating. I once had a high school student who would aggressively chew gum whenever the material got difficult. Freud would say these students are unconsciously regressing to the oral stage to find comfort. The educator's role. For the student stuck in this mode, the teacher effectively becomes the surrogate parent. The key here is to build trust. These students need to know that the food, knowledge, support, praise isn't going to disappear. Sarcasm or coldness can be devastating to an orally fixated student because it feels like rejection or starvation. However, we also have to help them wean. We can't spoon-feed them forever. The art of teaching these students is to provide a secure base while gently pushing them toward independence. It's saying, I know you can do this. Try the first 3 problems on your own, and then I'll come check on you. You are validating their need for connection while encouraging them to stand on their own 2 feet. Act 2. The anal stage, 1 to 3 years. The battle for control. As the child becomes a toddler, the spotlight of libido shifts to the process of elimination. Yes, we are talking about potty training. This is the anal stage. In Freud's view, this is the first time the child faces a serious external demand to control a bodily urge. Society, via the parents, says, you can't just go whenever you want. You have to hold it. You have to follow the rules. The central conflict here is control. It is a tug of war between the child's will, the id, and the parent's authority, the ego, superego. How parents handle this creates lasting personality traits. In the classroom, this stage is an absolute goldmine for understanding student personality types. Freud described 2 main outcomes of fixation here, and every teacher will recognize them immediately. First, we have the anal retentive personality. If parents were too strict or harsh during potty training, the child might react by holding everything in and becoming obsessed with order. In the classroom, this is your perfectionist. The student, their handwriting is immaculate. Their binder is color-coded. They freak out if the schedule changes unexpectedly. They hate group projects because they can't control what the other kids do. They are rule followers to a fault. The struggle. While these students are often a teacher's dream because they are so organized, they often suffer from high anxiety. They are terrified of making a mess, literally or figuratively. Second, we have the anal expulsive personality. If parents were too lenient, the child might rebel by letting it go wherever they want. The student. This is the kid whose desk looks like a tornado hit it. Papers are crumpled at the bottom of the backpack. They constantly lose their pencils. They are often creative and emotional, but disorganized and defiant. They resist authority just for the sake of resisting. The educator's role. When you are dealing with a power struggle in the classroom, you are often dealing with anal stage dynamics. If you get into a yes you will, no I won't argument with a student, you have entered the toddler battleground. For the retentive student, the perfectionist, your job is to help them loosen up. Create safe spaces for them to make mistakes. Teach them that a messy draft is part of the writing process. Show them that the world won't end if they get a B-. For the expulsive student, the messy rebel, you need to provide structure without being a tyrant. If you come down too hard, they will dig their heels in. Instead of demanding, clean this desk right now, which triggers their defiance, try offering a choice. Hey, do you want to organize your folder now or during the last 5 minutes of class? This gives them a sense of autonomy, control, while still getting the job done. Act 3. The phallic stage, 3 to 6 years. The birth of conscience. This is the most controversial part of Freud's theory, the phallic stage. This is where the Oedipus complex for boys and Electra complex for girls come into play. Freud theorized that children develop unconscious desires for the opposite-sex parent and view the same-sex parent as a rival. Now, before you roll your eyes, let's strip away the literal interpretation. We don't need to assume our kindergartners are plotting to overthrow their fathers. The educational takeaway from this stage is about identification and the formation of the superego. To resolve the conflict of this stage, the child realizes they can't win the parent, so they decide to join the rival parent. A boy tries to become like his father. A girl tries to become like her mother. Through this process, They internalize the parents' values, morals, and rules. This is the birth of the conscience in the classroom. This stage roughly corresponds to the preschool and kindergarten years. You see this dynamic play out in the intense focus on gender roles and playing house. But more importantly, you see the development of moral judgment. Children in this stage are obsessed with rules and fairness. They are the tattletales. Why do they tattle? Because they are testing out their new superego. They are trying to figure out right from wrong, and they look to the teacher, the ultimate authority figure, to reinforce the moral code. If a student has a fixation here, or if the process goes wrong, perhaps due to an absent or abusive parent, you might see two extremes. 1. The overactive superego, the child who is crippled by guilt. They feel responsible for everything. If another kid gets in trouble, they cry. They are terrified of authority. 2. The weak superego, the child who seems to have no conscience. They don't feel guilt when they hurt others. They only behave to avoid punishment, not because they feel it's the right thing to do. The educator's role. In the early elementary years, teachers are essentially co-authors of the child's superego. We are helping them write their internal rule book. It is crucial to model fairness and consistency. When a student breaks a rule, we have to separate the deed from the doer. We aren't shaming the child, which attacks their identity. We are correcting the behavior. We are helping them internalize a moral compass that isn't based on fear, but on community and empathy. For the weak conscience student, we have to explicitly teach empathy. Look at Sarah's face. How do you think she feels when you take her blocks? We have to help them connect their actions to others' feelings, bridging the gap that wasn't fully formed during their identification process at home.